Okay, I've chosen this as my introductory slide. It is definitely not a beautiful slide, and I would say it is even rather disturbing. Okay, but I've chosen it as the introductory slide. But I think because I think it's a very powerful image to show the kind of turbulent history very recently that the whole region is going through. This slide was taken around 1991 after the collapse of the Albanian communist regime. Before that, living in the area was like living in hell. Okay, that's why when the regime collapsed, everybody just dashed out of the country, and how desperate is so powerfully shown in these slides. Okay, and just 30 years later, the whole region become one of the nicest place to travel in, with friendly people and lots of wonderful things to do. What the 3 decades that the region has seen. And I was extremely lucky because this trip, I was actually accompanied by a professor, and he was among one of these refugees who ran out of the country. So not only do I have the walking encyclopedia for medieval history, ancient history, through him, I also gained an insight into life before and after that dramatic chapter of the region. Okay. Today, I am essentially going to concentrate talking about the former Yugoslavia and the country of Albania, whereas Balkan itself actually encompasses more country, the former Yugoslavia, Albania, plus the countries of Moldova, Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece. I have not been to Moldova, Romania, and Bulgaria, so I won't cover in this presentation. And I think Greece is a totally different topic altogether. When I was invited to do this talk, I wonder how should I name the talk. I thought of naming it Mosaic of the former Yugoslavia, because that's essentially the focus of our talk, but there is also Albania. And also Yugoslavia may sound a little bit too political, and this is definitely not a political presentation. I thought about using the title Where the Giant Cross Path. Really, this region reminded me a lot of Indochina, which I wrote a book about some time back. And I used the title Where the Giant Cross Path. And really, this is like Indochina was where Chinese and Indian civilization crashed. And then this region, Balkan, is actually where the Eastern and Roman Empire and later the Venetian, the Byzantine, and the Ottoman Turks crashed. And in more recent history, both areas are actually some of the bloodiest theater of war when the world was experiencing Cold War. Okay, but I thought I don't want to use the same title, and I decided to make it maybe a little bit more interesting and name the journey and name this presentation A Journey with a Banana Professor. Okay, now you know that my journey was made with a professor, and why banana professor? Shall I keep the answer to the end of the presentation? So hope to get all of you around. Keep all of you around. Okay, as I mentioned, this region is really where the giant cross path. It is precisely here in Croatia, now part of Balkan, of course, where Emperor Diocletian divided the whole Roman Empire into Eastern and Western Roman Empire, which we all know Western Roman Empire soon collapsed, and the Eastern Roman Empire became the Byzantine Empire. Okay. Later on, round about Renaissance, before and after Renaissance, the whole Croatia is really the playground of the Venetian Empire. In fact, apart from Venice itself, most of the most beautiful Venetian cities are actually found here in the Balkan. And push back a couple of hundred years, this whole region has been the battleground of the Christian European Habsburg and later the mightiest Habsburg and Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Muslim Ottoman Empire. And as you can see, the country of Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, and so on were at times belonging to the Austro-Hungarian and at times belonging to the Ottoman Turks. still a little bit on the history, and all this mighty empire left behind a lot of historical and archaeological sites, which are for us to enjoy now. Ancient history, you have the Greek and Roman. You can see them in Butrint, which, well, I've seen probably about more than 50 Roman archaeological sites, and trust me, this Butrint really ranks high among them. And as I mentioned, this is where Diocletian, in his palace, divided the Eastern and Roman Empire. In the medieval history, we can see a lot of sites about Byzantium and Serbian and some of the most beautiful Eastern Orthodox churches. They are now in Kosovo and Serbia. And during the Renaissance period, you see lots of Phoenician cities, lots of beautiful Art Nouveau cities, and also a lot of Ottoman Turks history in the various countries. And just in the most recent history, Sarajevo in Bosnia is really where the first shot of World War I was fired. And when you visit there, you still can retrace the whole journey of how the assassins was going after the Duke. And finally, and in the most ridiculous situation, they fired the first shot of World War I, and so on. Okay, so geographically, it is also very diverse. Up north, you have the Julian Alps, which is as beautiful as Austrian or Switzerland or the Swiss Alps, except that it is at 30% the price and perhaps 3% the number of tourists. Wonderful place for hiking. Along the Dalmatian coast, which is now in Croatia, you have beautiful coastline and again the Venetian city. And out here you have the great fertile Austro-Hungarian plain, which is the centerpiece of one of the mightiest empire in Europe. And just take note that Belgrade is here, okay, just where the plain ends, and then all the undulating mountains of the whole Balkan starts. This strategic position make Belgrade very, very important, and I will talk a bit about it later. And hidden among these mountains here are endless canyons, waterfall, and national parks. And then out here, we have the Carpathian Mountain in Romania, another great place for hiking and for nature lover. I made two trips to the Balkan. The first one is actually from Slovenia to Croatia and all the way down the Croatian coast, a little bit into Bosnia and end up in Montenegro. I shall talk a little bit more about this trip towards the end, talk a little bit briefly about this trip towards the end. And today, this will be the focus of my trip, which is a trip I made with a professor. I flew into Budapest in Hungary and did a short drive to Subotica in Serbia, and then come down to Belgrade, travel right across Serbia, 2, 3, 4 are all in Serbia, and then cross into Kosovo, cross into North Macedonia before ending my trip in Albania. Okay, Subotica, sorry. This is really one of the little gem that most people did not know about, and it is really the highlight for Art Nouveau architecture. Okay, Art Nouveau architecture is just around the turn of the last millennium when everything in Europe was perfect. It was at the height of their colonial power. It was before the devastating First World War, and life was Belle Époque in France, and all the great things were happening in Europe, and you can just see it in the architecture. Not only are there some grand and beautiful edifices, as you walk around the town, you can just feel the wealth and the comfort and of the citizens. Look at all the beautiful windows and doorways and so on. It's just a sign of wealth in Europe around the time. And we spent a day or so here enjoying the beautiful city on a walking tour before we head down to Belgrade. Now, Belgrade is perhaps the most important city in Yugoslavia, in the whole Balkan. The there are four main capital cities along the Danube River. First, you have Vienna, everybody knows about it. And then you have the Budapest. And then it comes down to Belgrade. And finally, Bucharest, the capital of Romania, before it flows into the Black Sea. Belgrade, just now you have seen from the map, it is really at where the plain of the Austro-Hungarian plain start to ends, and then the mountains of the Balkan starts. Therefore, its position is very strategic. Moreover, it is at the junction of Sava River and the Danube River, and therefore it occupies a strategic position, which makes it become a very important trading hub and as well as military outpost. Okay, when you're there, you have to spend a lot of time in this beautiful Belgrade fort. You can stand here and just look at the confluence of the river. And nearby is this Nes Malolovia street, which is the main street of Belgrade. And this is where Belgrade really shake off its very violent and unpleasant past, and now really appear as one of the very beautiful European city with sidewalk cafe, beautiful restaurants, music playing, and so on. It's now today a very lovely city. This main street actually ends in the National Museum of Belgrade, which definitely deserve your visit. And for where to stay in Belgrade, I really strongly recommend this nice square hotel, which is just a stone throw away from the National Museum, and therefore walking distance to the fort, as well as the main street where all the top F&B of the city is. Now, Belgrade was the capital of Yugoslavia before it split up. And to visit Yugoslavia, you have to visit the region, you have to know this guy called General Joseph Tito. Not knowing Tito is like not knowing Mao when you visit Mao Zedong when you visit China, not knowing Atatürk when you visit Turkey, not knowing Washington when you visit USA, or not knowing Lee Kuan Yew if you come to Singapore. Okay, so I think you got it. This is the man who actually was able to unite the whole Yugoslavia, which shortly after his death totally split up. And it is definitely a very authoritarian communist country. But I would say among all the countries inside the Iron Curtain, this is perhaps one of the best run and the most open, and life is perhaps the best. In fact, it is non-aligned. It is the only communist country that was not dictated by Soviet Union at that time. Okay, it stands itself. It decides its own fate. Okay, I've been traveling around Eastern Europe quite a fair bit, and wherever I go, I love to ask the people about life before and after the fall of the Berlin Wall. In Poland, in the Baltic countries of Estonia and Latvia, and in Georgia, people just hated the communist period, just hated the life before the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's one-sided, it's very obvious. But here in Yugoslavia, I was very surprised. I would say even 50-50. 50% of them actually miss the cushy life during the time of General Joseph Tito. There was very low crime rate, almost no unemployment, and people are really living quite freely by the Soviet Union standard or by any of those communist countries standard at that time. Well, anyway, his residence is right here, and there is actually a museum called the Flower of Dome, which is a great place for you to understand him, and in fact understand a lot of the history about Yugoslavia and about Balkan. Okay, so we spent 2 to 3 days in Belgrade, and then we head south to this place called Studenica. This is really the cradle of Serbia. It is where Serbian Empire started from. By the way, the whole Yugoslavia, there were only 2 countries that really has a historical empire. One is Serbia, the other one is Albania. The rest of the country are just creation, or should I say fragments of Yugoslavia that arose after the breakup of the country after the Balkan War. Okay, and what I love about this site is, if you look at this picture here, you can really see Serbia at the crossroad of the Eastern Orthodox Europe versus the Western Europe. If you look at the architecture here, those people who have been traveling around Europe probably can recognize that it is the pre-Gothic Romanist architecture with its big rock and very walls that is devoid of any decoration. So that is typically Western Europe. But then look at all the onion domes, and again, those people who have been traveling out Eastern Europe, this is unmistakably Eastern Orthodox Church architecture. But inside the churches, inside all these churches and cathedral, it is unmistakably Eastern Orthodox with all its beautiful icon painting and so on. And what is also amazing is that hardly half an hour drive away, the whole architecture and the cityscape change. And this is an Ottoman outpost with its Islamic building, mosques and bazaar, winding streets, and so on. It really speaks the story of Balkans so well that this is the place where Europe and the Islamic world come together. Okay, so we drove right across Serbia, and then we crossed into Kosovo. Okay, this is Serbia. There is actually one country here that is not named, is Montenegro. Okay. Serbia has never recognized Kosovo, and therefore, although they are neighboring country, the border is closed. So we actually have to drive into Montenegro and then get into Kosovo. Okay. Now, Kosovo. Kosovo is actually the second youngest country in the world. It achieved its independence only in 2008 as a result of the Balkan War, the nasty Balkan War. By the way, the youngest country in the world is actually South Sudan, independence in 2011, and the third youngest country is actually East Timor, probably appendix of Indonesia, achieved its independence in 2002. Kosovo is mainly Albania. Okay, in fact, it used to be a province of Albania, and ethnically they are 93 to 95% Albanian. Okay, honestly speaking, the future of Kosovo is very uncertain. Okay, the country has never been nowhere within the country has been a very important part of either the Albanian empire or part of Yugoslavia. In fact, it is even under Serbia when it was part of Yugoslavia. That's why Serbia refused to recognize its independence. Okay, the capital of Pristina is kind of a mishmash. Okay, interesting that it is a capital, but very much an outpost feeling. Okay. The countryside is nevertheless very beautiful because this is actually where the whole Balkan mountain is at its most dramatic. Okay, I actually drove from Pristina into North Macedonia in this beautiful highway built by the Chinese. Okay, the Chinese went in to help them to build this highway. I'm not sure. Okay, the whole country is just about 50 kilometers by 50 kilometers, and this highway actually runs 25 kilometers, meanders through a very beautiful valley, but to me it looks like a complete environmental nightmare and disaster. And to build this, as you can see here, a very underutilized highway. Now, nevertheless, I get to enjoy its efficiency of getting me in and out of Kosovo very, very quickly. One of the things I enjoyed most in Kosovo is again this pair of city, Prizen and Pec. Both are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Both are again within 20 minutes drive of each other, and both again reinforce the story of the Ottoman Turks and the Byzantium, the empire struggling for influence within the region. And can you imagine that I was in both these UNESCO World Heritage Sites of totally different history, background, and heritage, accompanied by a professor who showed us all the nitty-gritties and all the interesting, intricate details. And for the whole day, I did not meet any other tourists. Again, this is always a reward of being one of the first people to visit some of the very exciting countries in the world. And I hope you guys can go there fast as well to enjoy that. Okay, Kosovo really just deserved about 2 to 3 days, and we got out of it, and we arrived in this country called North Macedonia. Now, North Macedonia, I was there when the people were perhaps at its most unhappy state. Okay, the country was formerly called Macedonia, but it wanted to join the European Union, and the Greek protested because the Greek has a province called Macedonia, and the Greek wanted wanted European Union to accept the membership of Macedonia only if it changed the country names to North Macedonia. Well, beggar can't be chooser. Macedonia was too desperate to join the European Union, and they agreed. The citizens were furious. They found that they just feel that the country just succumbed to pressure and were forced to change the country name by another country. Okay, this was unhappiness number one. And number two was a little bit more controversial. I don't know if you can see from all these pictures that there were endless statues, just endless statues. Within an area as small as our Singapore CBD or Hong Kong's Wan Chai, there were more than 100 statues. Okay, some as big as this, and some small, but most of them were bigger than life size. And none of these statues has any historical significance. It was just a way of literally trying to attract tourists. So the citizens find it Disneyland-like, and again, just find that the politicians and the government is making the city a Disneyland without soul, and with all the structures, spend all the money for something that does not even represent the country or the cities. Okay. But nevertheless, it was very interesting for us to walk around. And I must say that as a casual tourist, it does make the city a lot more enjoyable. I don't know about how you guys feel if you do go there. So like I said, there are so many statues. Even our guide probably can only recognize 5% of them and totally don't know the significance of what all these figures are. But I believe many of you can recognize this lady here. She's, of course, Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa is actually an Albanian nun, but at that time, Kosovo was part of Albania, and therefore her hometown is actually here in Kosovo. And there is actually, you can actually visit her residence and the museum, which we did. And I thought that was very, very nice. Where to stay? I think you have to stay in Marriott Skopje. Okay, this is Marriott Skopje, and just try and make sure that you get one of these rooms, because you could be sitting there at night having a glass of wine and looking down at the whole square with all its statues. By the way, this guy here, originally it is just called the statue of a warrior, and halfway through they decided to call it the statue of Alexander, because they decided, oh yeah, Alexander is actually a Macedonian prince, and actually Alexander was born in the Greek part of Macedonia, so that again is very controversial. But anyway, if you stay around here, get a good view, look at this beautiful square lit up at night, come down for a walk. I did enjoy Skopje very much as well. Okay, if Skopje is Disney-like, without its heritage or history, Lake Ohrid is exactly the reverse. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, both because of the ecology of the lakes, as well as its historical significance. The old town of Lake Ohrid has been continuously occupied since the Bronze Age. You still can see some Bronze Age site, and then there's Greek ruin, Roman ruin, Slavic sites, Byzantine sites, and of course Ottoman sites again. Everything, more than 2,000 years of history crammed into this small little town. And at its height, it has more than 365 churches for a very small population of only about 100,000. They actually say that you can have one church every day within walking distance. And of course, the best way to enjoy the place is a walking tour. And you can see that this is unmistakably the Roman amphitheater. And up here, you have the Slavic fort, which is what, 800 over years old. And then you have the Byzantine wall with all its Eastern Orthodox cathedral. And then you have all the Ottoman houses with its typical narrow streets. And the whole thing just set on a beautiful mountain slope overlooking Lake Ohrid. We had a walking tour and our guide was great. He timed it exactly such that at sunset, when we turn around the corner and bang, we have this beautiful St. John Theologian Church right there, set at the edge of the Lake Ohrid. And we enjoyed sunset there. Anywhere else, this could be the Tanah Lot, okay? It could be, I don't know, some of the anywhere else, it will be crowded with hundreds of photo camera clicking tourists. But when we were here, I think again we only have about another small group of tourists enjoying the site there with us. Okay. So we enjoyed the place at sunset, and at twilight we descended down to the lake, had dinner, a seafood, or rather lake food dinner by the shore, and took a relaxing walk, enjoying the night view of the church, and all the way back to the hotel. Okay, from North Macedonia, okay, here, Lake Ohrid is somewhere here, we actually crossed into Albania. Albania will be my favorite country in the whole Balkan. And it was amazing because I remember when I was in Antarctica in 1996, I actually met a very elderly American tourist who then has been to everywhere. And he said of all the places he went, he always enjoyed except Albania, which was so gloomy and so grim. And I can understand why, because that was 1997, just a few years after that disturbing photo was taken. That was the darkest time of Albania, but it has now since changed. Albania is now one of the most forward-looking, happy citizens and friendliest place to visit. Okay, I have a short video here. I hope most of you all have watched the movie Taken. Well, anyway, if you have not, it is actually by Liam Neeson. Okay, the movie is about Albanian taking hostage, and then that's why taken by Albanian. Okay, and therefore it definitely is a very, very negative image of the country. So instead of, well, you can't beat Hollywood. Hollywood set the tone. So instead of beating Hollywood, he joined them. Okay, so that's why they produced this movie called Taken. Produced this short video clip called Taken by Albania. It's just about 2 minutes long.
Hey Liam, we love watching your films, and we think you're very talented. But we got a bond pick with you.
I will find you. Marco from Trubuja.
You've made people of the world think that we Albanians are criminals, thugs, and always on the lookout for daughters to kidnap. Well, maybe it's time for us to show you our specific set of skills. Take you on a plane, because we think you will be taken by Albania.
Hey Liam, come and be taken by our spectacular coast and our friendly smile.
By our amazing history.
By our traditional handcrafts.
By our beautiful castles.
By our fjords and valleys.
By our glacial lakes.
Come and be taken by our Mediterraneans.
By our graceful flamingos.
Vieni ci qui rendeu ne podime de tome so.
Hey, Liam!
Welcome! Ei ano Shiprito para vos vir com este som.
You will be taken by the warmth and friendliness of all the locals.
We've been taken by Albania! Now it's your turn! Yeah!
I've been taken by the beauty of Uzumi Canyon. Now it's your turn.
So if you're ready to be taken by the untainted beautiful Albania, call us, email us, or just find us. We know you know how. Marco from Tropoja and his whole family will be waiting for you.
A friend gave this to me. It's Albanian. You mind translating it?
As I told you, my dear friend, the house of an Albanian belongs to God and to the guest. Welcome.
Helium.
Hope you enjoyed the short video clip. Okay, as I mentioned, we drove into Albania from via Lake Ohrid. Lake Ohrid was actually shared by Albania and North Macedonia. And once we enter Albania, there was this strange landscape. Okay, across a rolling plain and all over the valley, you can see these bunkers. Okay, this is the work of this man called Enver Hoxha. Enver Hoxha really ranked with Kim of North Korea, the Nevin of Myanmar, as some of the most ridiculous dictators you can ever come across. Okay, he has this, I don't know, paranoia that someone is going to attack them, attack him, attack the country, and therefore, for a small country of just 3 over million people, there are 300 over thousand of these bunkers. Okay, some of them big and huge, like the one in Tirana, the capital, and a lot of them are just small little one that can only shelter less than 5 people or so on. Nevertheless, a lot of them are very beautifully set in this mountain, and a lot of them has been very artistically converted to be whatever purpose the Albanian want now. Okay, this Enver Hoxha really dominates the psychic of all Albanian. There are endless crazy story and about him. One of it is that he actually executed his prime minister because the prime minister's son jilted his daughter. Okay, and therefore there was some dirty family secret going around, and he executed his prime minister. Okay. Towards the end of his reign, he is just ridiculous. And one of the ridiculous things he did was, finally, he decided, for some reason, he decided to ban banana. Okay, banana has been one of the cheapest, nutritious fruits that Albania has been able to get for a very, very long time because of his neighboring country, Greece, and so on. And he just decided to ban banana, no banana in the country. And therefore, the professor family has to do without banana. And shortly after this, well, like I say, the professor, by then he's Professor Alls. Okay, Professor Alls actually ran out of the country across into Greece. And when he got across Greece, the whole family just went bonkers. They just saw so many banana on the street, and the mother in particular just went crazy over the banana and stocked up so much banana that she has to force the professor, then a teenager, to eat banana non-stop for a fortnight and more. And that's why, to these days, he just doesn't take any banana. Okay, he's allergic to banana now. So I thought this was quite a ridiculous story, and therefore my journey is with the banana professor. Okay, now fortunately, Albania is not just all about dark tourism like in many countries, about how cruel the regime is and therefore leaving behind all those sites. Albania has a wonderful history, just like the rest of the Balkan countries. And the first place we visit is actually Berat. From the setting of the city, guarding this deep ravine, you can imagine how important and how strategic this city is. Okay, therefore, it has become a very important trading post as well as a very important military outpost for the Ottoman Turks. Okay, and therefore, of course, leave behind a lot of wonderful architecture, which we really enjoy a walking tour. Between Lake Ohrid and Berat, many people like to compare and rank to see which one is more beautiful. My vote will go to Berat. Okay, and of course, you then can also see that there is a cathedral to show that during the Ottoman time, it's actually not a time when they try to exterminate all Christian community there. In fact, a lot of time they coexist actually very happily in many places. One of the museums you have to visit in Berat is actually this Onufri Museum. Onufri is a contemporary of all the great Italian artists, Michelangelo and so on in the 15th, 16th century. Okay, and his specialty is actually icon painting. He's perhaps the most renowned icon painter ever exists in history. Okay, so you can see a lot of his work in this museum. And one of the very interesting piece of work is actually this one. You can see that one of the Ottoman sovereign were actually talking and seeking counsel with a lot of the Catholic nuns. It again really shows a very friendly relationship the two religions had at that time. So a lot of the time, the Western history or literature like to portray the Turks as the demon, the Islamic demon that tried to always at the gate of Vienna trying to threat to Christian civilization and so on. Actually, nothing could be further from the truth. A lot of the Ottoman Sultan are some of the most enlightened rulers of the medieval time. I mean, of the medieval or Renaissance period, okay, of the pre-colonial period, and exemplified by this painting here by Onufri. Okay. From Berat, we actually visit a winery. Okay, many people visit many great winery in Europe, Burgundy, Bordeaux, and so on. But this one really holds a special one in my heart. It tells a fantastic story. Not only does it produce the best champagne, or rather bubbly wine, Chandelier, which actually means let's celebrate in Albania, it also really illustrates the recent history of Albania. This Kobo winery has been run by the same family for many generations before Enver Hoxha time. And of course, during his time, he nationalized it. The whole family couldn't take life and managed to sneak out and escape to Italy. And this winery was nationalized and only produced wine for the Albanian government. Needless to say, the wine was some of the most horrible you can ever taste. And fortunately, after the communist, Enver Hoxha's regime collapsed, the family that ran over to Italy managed to continue the tradition of winemaking and return to Albania and continue running this winery. And today it produces excellent wine and continue telling the story of Albania. In fact, we were shown around by a young girl, I think in her late teens, showing us around, and she was enthusiastically telling us about her family history and story while also preparing to further her study in Vienna. So that again shows that the Albanians now are looking forward to a very, very bright future, which is very nice to experience in the country. Okay, now our second last stop was actually Butrint, which I would rank it together with Ephesus or Pompeii as some of the greatest Roman archaeological sites I've seen. Okay, its setting is wonderful. You can see this is Adriatic coast, and if you are around here, you can actually look across the Adriatic Sea into the Greek island of Corfu. Okay, and you can spend lots of time wandering now this whole archaeological site, and this is where again Professor Alls really come alive. Apart from just a professor in history, he specialized in Roman and Greek antiquity. Okay? And this mosaic of the circular mosaic of the tapestry is really one of the most wonderful Roman mosaic work around. Okay, we roam around the site, and I actually learned something about the stonework. Okay, I actually enlarged this slide from a Google picture to illustrate the point. You can see this big rock here, which are much nicer carved than all these small, little messy, small stones by cement. Okay, one of them is Greek, one of them is Roman. Make a guess, which is which? Okay, you probably think that Romans are more sophisticated, therefore the stoneworks are better carved. No, actually, these are the Greek and these are the Roman. And I started wondering why Greek came before the Roman. Why did the Roman deteriorate in its stoneworks? Well, it was actually because of the invention of cement, okay, which are able to hold all these stones together, and therefore the stonemason need not so painstakingly ensure all the rocks are perfectly cut in order to fit to hold up the building. Okay, that definitely created a lot of efficiency, and therefore the Roman were much more efficient in their architecture, in their buildings of the beautiful edifices and churches and amphitheater and so on. And therefore they can go on a construction spree. And that's why we see so many Roman cities all over and much fewer Greek cities, although the Greek will just predates the Roman by hardly a few hundred years. Okay, so that's portrayed there for you. And our final stop is Tirana. Okay, this square, this is the main square of Tirana, and this statue here used to be the statue of Enver Hoxha in his typical communist leader posture of holding up his hand. Immediately after his fall, the local Romania just tore down the building and erect the statue of Skanderbeg, which is actually the founder of the Albanian Empire. And they redo the square, and today it is very beautiful. Okay, a beautiful square, beautiful garden, and you still can see a lot of Ottoman building even in the capital of Tirana itself, and lots of beautiful restaurants and so on. We had our farewell dinner there with a bottle of Chandelier, which was very nice. Okay. There are also a lot of museums to visit in Albania. This bunker museum here tells the story of Enver Hoxha and the life during his regime. This is a house of leaf which talk about KGB of Albania, how they basically supervise and tap into every aspect of the fine art museum. Okay, fine art meaning propagandic art. Okay, as in here. And this picture is interesting. The artists like to draw beautiful women, and you can see that he made the woman quite voluptuous, okay, with a rounded breast. And Enver Hoxha find that anti-revolutionist, and therefore the artist was actually blinded because of this piece of work. So another ridiculous story for Enver Hoxha there for you. Okay, so from Tirana we flew out back home. Okay, and the other trip that I said I will briefly mention is this trip that I did about, I think, 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 years earlier. And I started in Slovenia, worked my way down to the entire length of Croatia, crossed into Bosnia for a while, and ended up in Montenegro. Now, for people who love history, love story, love unique heritage, love the story of the empire and the religion and so on, I would definitely recommend the trip that I just mentioned. But those for people who just want beautiful scenery, great food, great accommodation, sort of indulgent, this trip may be slightly more suitable. Okay, we started in Lake Bled. Okay, it is one of those places that I saw in the postcard and say, it's so beautiful, I have to go. And it didn't disappoint. So, but don't just stop at Lake Bled. You should go hiking in the Julian Alps, and beautiful hiking trails, lots of relais and chateau property dotted here and there for you to have a comfortable night, and in fact, gourmet food after your hiking. And then this is Ljubljana, a population of 300,000. It's just one of those European cities that you must fall in love with. Beautifully set beside a river, surrounded by mountain. And then you can visit this Podjana cave full of stalactites and stalagmites. So a very small country of Slovenia, you can drive across the length and the height of it, north to south, east to west within 5 hours, and there's so much variety to offer. Okay, from Slovenia, just a short 3 hours drive, and you are in Istria, a peninsula of Croatia. This is really a gourmet paradise. In fact, in the world, there are only 2 places where you can get white truffles. Okay, one is in Elba, and the other one is here. I think Elba, the Hong Konger will particularly be very familiar with the place. This is where Stanley Ho will go bid for the auction and get a big piece of white truffle, fly back by private jet, and invite all his friends to dinner. Okay, so that was Elba. It was a lot more expensive than, it is a lot more expensive than truffle here in, just because it is less known. Okay, not only white truffle, this is also one of the 2 places with the highest quality of black truffles here in Istria, and the other one is actually in Provence. Okay, apart from that, when we were there, they just beat Tuscany to in a competition for the best olive oil. It also produced excellent honey. And Istria has for most of its history belonged to Italy. So with the culinary heritage and tradition of Italy and all the excellent ingredient that I mentioned just now, it's just a gourmet paradise. And I thought it's such a wonderful hiking and gourmet combination to hike in the Julian Alps and then come down to Istria to enjoy all the great food after having worked away all your calories in the mountain. Okay, from Istria, come down to Plivis National Park, which has actually been commonly referred to as the Jiuzhaigou of Europe. Okay, beautiful waterfalls and so on. And from Plivis, we can drive to Split, which is a place, another Venetian city, and it is also where the Diocletian Palace, which I mentioned a few times, is. I did not show in these slides. And then you can see another Ottoman city called Mostar, a very beautiful one, and end the trip in Dubrovnik. Okay, to me, perhaps the most beautiful city, Venetian city after Venice itself. Okay. And from here, you can actually extend to Montenegro. Okay, and the place to stay is this Aman Sveti Stefan. This whole island belongs to Aman. Okay, and it used to belong to, it used to be a fishing village, and then it was converted to General Hito's private holiday residence, and then after he died and Yugoslavia split up, he changed hands a few times, and Aman took over to make it an Aman resort for you to indulge in some luxury. But just before the slideshow, I was informed by Intriq that Aman was forced to stop its contract to run the resort in the year 2021. I'm not sure why, and hoping to get back to run it again in 2022. Okay, to clarify the detail with Intriq Travel. Okay, so that was my other journey. So you can see that my first trip that I mentioned, start from Budapest, come down to Belgrade, come down to Serbia, work my way into Kosovo, and then into North Macedonia, end up in Tirana, which you can also come to Aman to, if it's still running, to have a last-minute luxury extension. And the second trip is actually from Ljubljana into Croatia, a bit into Bosnia, and come back down into Montenegro. These are the 2 trips. Okay, just before COVID, I've actually booked a trip to do Moldova, Romania, and Bulgaria. Supposed to do it April last year. So of course, you know what happened. It will perhaps be one of the trips that I will continue doing after COVID. And if anybody is interested in doing this trip, please tell Intriq. Hopefully they can round out enough people and can do an Intriq finesse trip so that I can join in and follow blindlessly to enjoy this place. Okay, with that, thank you very much. I'll hand you back to Jake and to conduct the Q&A and so on. Thank you very much for your time again. Bye.